When I was 10, my dad died in an accident. Then the lawyer asked me if I wanted to stay with my mom or take the 200 million he left behind. In my past life, I cried and begged for my mom, but she took my dad's pension and married the neighbor one. Oh no, it was Uncle Zayo. I became a burden to them and eventually died exhausted on a construction site. I was only 28. Remembering that sad, ridiculous life, I realize how foolish I was now at this crossroads of fate. This woman sobs uncontrollably. Old Neen, how could you leave like this? Leaving me and our orphan child behind. How are we supposed to survive? She cries so hard her body crumbles like clay, barely held up by someone's support. She could collapse any second. In my last life, I was fooled by this act, thinking she was truly heartbroken, that she couldn't live without me. So I threw myself at her feet, hugging her, crying and begging to stay. But what happened? She took my dad's pension and happily remarried in less than 3 months. She married Zhao Qian, the man she always said cared for us. My dad's ashes hadn't even cooled when that guy moved into our house. He slept in the new bed where my dad used to lie, and I became the unwanted burden, the problem no one wanted to see. Zhao Qian has a son 2 years older than me who sees me as a thorn in his side. Lilan, trying to please her stepson, would beat me and curse me without mercy. The money my dad left became their playground. It turned into spending cash for the stepson's show-off lifestyle. While I had to scrape together tuition by picking up trash, I didn't even finish high school before they forced me to work under the excuse that boys should become independent early. I spent 10 years carrying bricks on construction sites. Finally, from overwork, I collapsed onto a pile of glowing hot steel rods and never woke up. Now I'm back. Lillian takes my hand and says, "Xiao Yi, don't be afraid. Mom will take good care of you from now on." She grabs me, tears and snot all over her face, but deep in her eyes, there's a faint hint of urgency and greed. Seeing that, I don't cry or scream like I did before. I just watch her act coldly. At that moment, my dad's friend and lawyer, Uncle Zhou, approaches. Lawyer Zhou sighs and pats my shoulder, then pulls a document from his briefcase and says, "Lilan, Xiao Yi, this is the will Ning he left behind." His voice is unusually serious. Ning he planned for everything. He had 200 million in assets, already notarized. Now there are 2 choices. First, Xiao Yi stays with you, and you manage this money as his pension and support until Xiao Yi becomes an adult. Hearing this, Lilan's breath quickens instantly. Her eyes flash with a terrifying light as she stares at the will. Second, if Xiao Yi chooses not to stay with you, this money goes into a trust fund managed by me. Xiao Yi will have exclusive control, and you, Lilan, won't get a dime. The room feels frozen. All eyes turn to me, a 10-year-old kid. Lilan freezes, staring in disbelief at Lawyer Zhou like she's saying, "How can you even suggest that?" Then her face twists in a deep pain. She hugs me tightly, screaming through tears, "Lawyer Zhou, how can you say that? How could I not love my son? Xiao Yi is my life." As she screams, she pinches my arm and whispers threateningly in my ear, "Ninji, if you say anything wrong, I'll beat you to death. You're my son, and your money is my money." In my past life, those words made me tremble with fear, and her claim that Mom couldn't live without me moved me too. But now, I just feel disgusted and sick. I can feel her pinching hand shake, not from sadness, but from excitement and nervousness. 200 million. She's never seen that much money in her life. She's already imagining the days after getting it, picturing a happy life with Zhao Qian. Slowly, I start to break free from that suffocating hug. Once free, I lift my head, meet Lawyer Zhou's stunned gaze, and say clearly and calmly, "Uncle Zhou, I choose the second option. I want the 200 million. The whole funeral falls into a deathly silence. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone stares at me, frozen. The pain on Lilan's face freezes, then cracks completely into fury and disbelief. She screams, "Ninji, what did you say?" Her voice is so sharp it feels like it's piercing eardrums. I calmly repeat, not raising my voice, but with words that hit like nails. I said, "I don't want you. I want the money." Lilan screams, "You're crazy, ungrateful son. I'm your mother. She loses all control, lunges at me like a wild woman, raising her hand to slap me. But her wrist is caught by a big hand. It's Lawyer Zhou, his face dark as he says, "Please calm down. We're in front of Ninja's altar, and this is Xiao Yi's own choice, a child who knows what he wants. You must have pushed him to this." Lawyer Zhou, clearly annoyed, lets go and says, "I repeat, this is Ninja's will, legally binding, since Xiao Yi has made his decision. I will start the necessary procedures immediately. From now on, you are no longer his legal guardian." Lilan is completely stunned. She looks at me with hatred and resentment, as if seeing a mortal enemy. She probably can't understand how her once obedient son suddenly became so cold and cruel. I didn't bother to pay her any more attention. I walked over to Lawyer Zhou, tugged on his sleeve, and asked, "Uncle Zhou, did Dad know all this?" He flinched, crouched down, looked me straight in the eyes, and, after a long pause, nodded sadly. "Your dad was a smart man. He loved you very much." Those words made my eyes instantly fill with tears. Yes, my dad was that smart. How could he not see through Lilan's shallow ways? He was just holding back to give me a complete home, until he was diagnosed terminal and didn't have much time left. Then he prepared this escape route for me. In my last life, I was way too stupid, destroying with my own hands the last love my dad had. This time, I won't make the same mistake. I choose the 200 million. In the end, Lilan was dragged away by relatives. And the venomous glare she shot me as she left is burned in my heart forever. But I don't care at all. Once I made my choice, the bond between us was broken. All that's left is hate. Lawyer Zhou became my new guardian, a man of integrity and trust. After my dad's funeral, he took me to live at his house. He showed me a long list of investments, projects my dad had carefully studied with him, but I skipped straight to the last page. "Uncle Zhou, sell everything else." Lawyer Zhou was shocked. "Xiao Yi, these are all top-tier stocks, carefully chosen by your dad. Very stable." I shook my head. Too slow. I pointed to some small names on the list. "Invest all the money in these companies." Lawyer Zhou was puzzled. Tencent, Alibaba, where those? I've never heard of them. If it's up to you, investment's no game. "Uncle Zhou, do you trust my dad?" He paused, then nodded. "Of course, then trust me this time, too." I told him my dad spoke to me in a dream. A lame excuse, but Lawyer Zhou looked in my eyes, so calm, not like a 10-year-old's. He nodded, moved by something. What he didn't know was those companies I pointed would shake the world in the next decade, becoming the biggest business giants, with me as the mysterious shareholder behind the scenes. After making all these arrangements, I finally relaxed and set a new goal in life, to just chill out. Yeah, just relax. In my last life, I worked myself to death. This time, I want to live comfortably. I asked Lawyer Zhou to find me the best private school. Not to study hard, but for the good atmosphere and the tasty cafeteria food. I started working out, not for any other reason, but to get abs and a defined waistline someday. To dress sharp, I began studying China's 8 great cuisines and learning to make my own wine. Not to become a chef, but to satisfy my cravings. I left all the problems to Lawyer Zhou and then to the professional team he assembled for me. Their leader was Lao Wu. I hired an elitist from Wall Street, paying him triple his usual salary. I had only one condition for him. "Don't bother me. Handle the problems yourself. And if you can't, just let the company go under." Lao Wu looked at me like I was some foolish, wasteful landlord's kid. But he followed my orders to the letter, so my life became, "Boss, 10-cent stock tripled again. We made 50 billion. I said, "I know, don't bother me. I'm busy figuring out how to make Buddha jump over the wall." Gradually, I slipped deeper into laziness, even starting to pass off small deals worth a few billion on my own initiative. And I kept drifting further down the path of doing nothing. Meanwhile, my wealth snowballed wildly out of control. But I was already numb to the numbers. I only cared about making my life more comfortable. I became a mysterious legend among billionaires. No one knew who I really was, just that there was a secretive Mr. Neen, as rich as a country but never seen, until I turned 18 and a woman appeared, shattering my lazy, peaceful life. Xiao Banxin, my ex-fiancée, our engagement. was a childhood promise made by our grandfathers after my father died. My family fell into decline, and no one mentioned the marriage again. But no one expected my father's inheritance to grow into a vast business empire 10 years later. Though I kept a low profile, my family's comeback caught the Shao family's attention. So, on my 18th birthday, the Shao patriarch came with his precious granddaughter, personally visiting me, claiming to honor the old engagement. That's when I met Shao Banqin for the first time. In Lawyer Zhou's living room, she wore an elegant white skirt suit, her long hair perfectly pinned up. Her makeup was subtle and refined. Beautiful, yes, but like an iceberg radiating a cold aura that kept everyone at bay. She was the classic businesswoman groomed to inherit the clan. Rational, powerful, and cold. They said she earned a double doctorate by age 20. At 22, she took over the family business with an iron fist, commanding respect even from the craftiest players in the corporate world. Her world was all business, interests, and data. She saw emotions as useless weaknesses. Are you ninja? She sat across from me, legs crossed, scanning me head to toe with obvious judgment and disdain. I just come back from the gym. I was wearing a loose tracksuit, my hair still damp with sweat. I answered lazily, leaning back on the couch, biting into an apple. My attitude clearly annoyed her. She frowned slightly. I heard you dropped out after high school, ninja. Studying's too exhausting, and now I'm focused on working out, cooking, making wine, and figuring out how to live comfortably, I said honestly. A mocking smile curled on Shao Banqin's lips. So you're just a lazy parasite with no skills? If you want to see it that way, I shrugged indifferently. She let out a cold laugh, her eyes burning with even more contempt. Ninja, let's be clear. This engagement is a joke from our grandfathers, not to be taken seriously. Shao Banqin's husband should be a strong man worthy of me, and I looked at her with interest. Then go talk to my grandfather yourself and cancel this engagement, she said firmly. As compensation, I can offer you money or a quiet position in our company. I almost spat out my apple. Money and a job? Did she even realize the Shao group she was so proud of was just a fraction of my assets? Seeing her so arrogant suddenly made me amused. In my past life, I wasn't even allowed to see her. But this time, she was sitting right in front of me, offering compensation like it was charity. I wiped my mouth and said with a smile, fine. Shao Banqin was stunned, clearly not expecting me to agree so quickly. What compensation do you want? She asked, regaining her icy composure. I don't want money. Or a position either, I said, standing and walking toward her, leaning close to whisper in her ear. She instinctively tried to pull back, but her body froze. I could smell her sharp, cold perfume. I'll lower my voice, so only she could hear. I want you to go tell your grandfather yourself that you're not worthy of me, ninja. Shao Banqin's pupils shrank violently. She probably never heard such arrogant words in her life. She pushed me hard, standing up, her face flushed with anger. Ninja, don't be ungrateful. You don't realize what's good for you. Respect is earned, not given. I sat back down, crossing my legs. Miss Shao, you were the one who looked down on me first, wasn't it? She looked down on me. Someone like you. Besides being born lucky, what else can you do? Doing nothing all day, just existing. What's the difference between you and a parasite? Because I like it, I spread my hands, I decide my life, unlike some people who live like precise machines, calculating even their happiness and sadness. My words clearly hit a nerve. Her face paled a few shades, and she clenched her fists. Those who walk different paths can't share the same goals. I'll cancel the engagement from now on. We're done. Saying that, she turned and left without looking back. Her proud back was like a white swan, defeated but refusing to bow. Lawyer Zhou came out of the study. With a worried look, he said, Shao, wasn't that a bit impulsive? The Shao family hold a lot of power in the capital. Don't worry, Uncle Zhou. She wants to break the engagement herself. I didn't kick her out. Besides, someone who can't even decide their own marriage. What kind of future do they have? I looked toward where Shao Banqin disappeared, my eyes emotionless. In my past life, she was the bright moon in the sky. I wasn't even worthy to look up at her in this life before my eyes. She was just a poor soul, trapped by her family. I was curious to see how broken her face would be. I thought it would be entertaining. The engagement scandal died down quickly. Xiao Banqin kept her word. Within days, the Xiao family officially announced the engagement was off. I was thrilled by the peace and continued my lazy lifestyle. Old goose calls kept coming every day, reporting how many small deals I'd closed. My personal fortune had swelled to a terrifying number I didn't even bother calculating. Yet I still wore cheap tracksuits and drove an ordinary car, going back and forth between the gym and the market, until one day, in a bakery about to close, I met an angel. It was a small shop tucked at the end of an old alley, decorated with a vintage style, selling nearly forgotten traditional Chinese desserts. I was drawn by a handwritten wooden sign at the entrance. Special of the day, steamed rice flour cake with osmanthus and caramelized sugar. This was my father's favorite dessert to make when I was a kid. I pushed the door open and stepped in. Wind chimes rang clear. A girl in a pale green cheapao came out of the kitchen. Her long hair reached her waist, makeup free, with a faint look of surprise. Seeing her made my heart skip a beat. It was a strange feeling. Not the fierce beauty of Xiao Banqin, but like a crystal-clear spring, pure and simple, bringing peace just by looking at her. "Do you still have a steamed rice flour cake with osmanthus?" I asked, my voice a little hoarse. The girl froze for a moment, then gave a gentle smile, like a spring breeze rippling across a lake. "Yes, please have a seat. I'll get it for you right away." Her voice was soft and sweet. I sat by the window. Soon she brought a plate of delicate cakes and placed it in front of me. The cakes were shaped like little plum blossoms, topped with glistening caramelized osmanthus, giving off a tempting sweet aroma. I picked one up and took a bite. This is the taste, exactly like my father's. A warmth rose from deep inside me, and my eyes welled up. "How is it?" "Good." The girl sat opposite me, resting her chin in her hands, watching me expectantly. "Excellent." I praised sincerely. "It tastes just like my father's." "Really?" Her eyes lit up. "This recipe was passed down to me by my grandmother. She says hardly anyone knows how to make it these days. Your grandmother must have been amazing." She puffed up her little chest proudly. "Of course, my name's Senjuchu, and this shop is mine. And you?" "I'm Ninji." We talked like old friends. That's how I learned she came from a family with a culinary legacy. Her ancestor was an imperial chef. She soaked up these traditional arts from a young age. She didn't like the 9-to-5 grind at big companies, so she opened her own small shop, just to share those incredible flavors. Her values were surprisingly close to mine. We both love a peaceful life, and we share a stubborn love for traditional culture. That afternoon, I stayed in that little bakery, chatting with her for hours. Sunlight streamed through the window frames, casting a golden glow around her. I watched her bright eyes as she spoke and caught her adorable, unconscious smiles. Somewhere deep inside, my heart felt full. Suddenly, my weary, hardened heart, scarred by rebirth, started to soften again. From that day on, Senjuchu's bakery became my refuge. I went every single day without fail, sometimes to try a new dessert she created, other times just to enjoy the tea she brewed herself. Most often, I just sat quietly, watching her work. She was so busy running everything by herself, preparing ingredients, baking, serving customers, cleaning. She did it all alone, but she never complained, always wearing a satisfied smile. I started helping her out, at first washing dishes, then peeling vegetables, and eventually she even let me into her kitchen to watch her make desserts. Her kitchen wasn't big, but it was tidy, with every tool neatly in place. When she worked, she was completely focused, like a devoted artist. I watched her delicate hands transform ordinary ingredients. I put down the sack of rice, turned around, and puffed out my chest on purpose. Want to feel what it's like. I thought she'd blush and run away, but she actually reached out her hand, her fingertips cold to the touch. With a faint sweet scent of glutinous rice, she gently traced the groove of my abdomen, firm to the touch. It was like she discovered a whole new world. Her eyes went wide. My body melted instantly. A burning rush surged from my gut all the way to my head. I've lived 2 lives, and this was the first time a girl stirred me like this. Seeing her innocent, curious expression, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I grabbed her small, mischievous hand. It was so soft, it felt like she had no bones. I lowered my voice and leaned close to her ear. Her face instantly flushed deep red, like a ripe apple, and she quickly pulled her hand away. She spun around and dashed out of the kitchen. I watched her run off and couldn't help but laugh. This girl was truly adorable. Our relationship slowly warmed during those everyday moments. We shared endless topics, from food and winemaking to kunku opera and booking gigs. I discovered she was like a treasure, always surprising me. She played the guzheng, painted with ink, and even played the piano. She seemed like a lady from another era, radiating classic charm everywhere she went. With her, the whole world felt slower, calm, and beautiful. My heart, which only wanted to lie still, began to stir. I started looking forward to seeing her every day, to her smile, to our little debates, to those small, unintentional gestures of hers. I even began thinking that having her by my side every day didn't sound so bad. At her dessert shop, I gave it a special name, my Imperial Kitchen, and she gave me a nickname. She said all I did was come by to collect rent while hogging all the best desserts she made. I knew the only thing missing between us was breaking that thin barrier. And who broke? It was an accident. That day, a rich kid in a sports car showed up and immediately fixed his eyes on Senjutsu. With his greasy look and careless words, he tried to buy the whole shop, so Senjutsu would go with him. Of course, she refused. The rich kid, furious and embarrassed, started causing a scene in the store, breaking things. I was in the kitchen, working on a new recipe. Hearing the commotion, I rushed out. I saw the shop in chaos, and Senjutsu's pale, frightened face. A fierce rage flared inside me. In 2 lives, I'd never been this angry. I stood in front of Senjutsu and stared coldly at the rich kid. "Get out! Who the hell do you think you are? Messing with my business." He arrogantly pointed his finger at me. I said nothing. I just pulled out my phone and called Old Woo. "Old Woo, give me a license plate number in 5 minutes. Make her, her company, and her family's business vanish from the capital." The rich kid froze for a moment, then burst out laughing. "You're kidding, right? Think this is a movie? That in 5 minutes you can wipe out my family? You know who my father is." I looked at him calmly, like I was staring at a dead man. In less than 3 minutes, his phone rang. He answered, and the smile froze on his face. "What? What did you say?" "The company's accounts are frozen. All partnerships canceled. How is this possible? Who did we offend?" His voice trembled with fear. Finally, he dropped to his knees with a thud, phone slipping from his hands. He looked up at me like I was a monster, lips trembling, unable to say a word. "Now, can you leave?" I said coldly. He crawled out without even taking his flashy sports car. The shop settled back into calm. Senjutsu looked at me, her beautiful eyes full of surprise and a hint of admiration. "Why you?" I turned to her and gently wiped the tears from her face. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Without waiting for her reaction, I lowered my head and kissed her cold lips, Senjutsu's lips. They were as soft as I'd imagined, with a sweet scent of caramelized osmanthus. At first, she froze, like a frightened fawn, then slowly relaxed and awkwardly responded. The kiss was light and brief, but it hit my heart like an electric shock. After a while, I reluctantly let her go. She lowered her head, her face so red it looked like she might bleed. "Don't you dare look away, Senjutsu." I lifted her face. Making her meet my eyes, I said seriously, "Do you want to be my girlfriend?" She bit her lip, her long lashes fluttering like butterfly wings. After a long pause, she let out a soft, like a mosquito's buzz. I smiled like a fool and pulled her into a tight hug, feeling like I had the whole world in my arms. After 2 lifetimes, I finally understood what excitement and happiness felt like. She whispered softly, "You were so scary just now. Did I frighten you? With just one call, you can ruin a company. Ning-yi, who are you really?" I looked at her. With her clear, innocent eyes, I knew I couldn't hide it anymore. "I told you. I'm a laid-back landowner." I poked her nose. "Only I own a lot of land. I share my story selectively, of course keeping the secret of my rebirth. I just said my father left me a huge inheritance, and with that money, I made some investments and earned a bit. Senjutsu blinked. A bit of money? The kind that can bankrupt a company in 5 minutes. How little is that? I thought for a moment and explained in terms she'd understand. Probably enough to buy tens of thousands of your dessert shops. Senjutsu took a deep breath, counted on her fingers for a while, then looked at me in amazement. Are you Kinjibo? I nodded. She was silent. My heart fluttered, worried the huge wealth gap might scare her off, but after a long silence, she suddenly lifted her head and looked at me seriously. Nin, listen closely, and from now on, your money is my money, and my money is still my money. I was stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. I lifted her up and spun her around a few times. All right, I'll do whatever you say. My manager of you some fan. She was dizzy from the spins, only able to wrap her arms around my neck and laugh with a silver laugh. I knew I hadn't chosen the wrong person. I love Senjutsu for who she is, not for the wealth she carries. Since being with Senjutsu, my laid-back life has become colorful. Together, we explore new desserts, ferment new wines. He takes me to the morning market. We'd argue heatedly with vendors over a single penny. I also took him out to eat at 3 Michelin-star restaurants, so he could taste dishes from around the world. He loves to touch my abs, saying they feel like a washboard. I like kissing his Adam's apple and watching his cheeks flush from a shiver. Like any couple in love, our nights were sweet. Old Goose says every day he almost chokes on dog food because of it. Boss, this is something else. The acquisition case for Huang Yu Group needs your signature. Just leave it there. First, I'm making Yuchun a steam pear with syrup. Boss, this is an invitation to a European royal dinner. Cancel it. I'm going to take Yuchua to see the new movie release. Boss, President Xiao from Xiao Group wants to request a meeting to discuss a partnership. When Old Wu mentioned President Xiao, I looked at him cautiously. My hand paused a moment. It had been a long time since I'd heard the name Xiao Banqin. I asked casually, what does he want from me? Old Wu explained that Xiao Group recently faced cash flow problems and urgently needs a big investment. They heard that we, Yifan Finson, are looking for cooperation. Yifan Finson is the investment firm I asked Old Wu to set up. It's the smallest corner of my vast empire. But even this tiny corner is a giant to Xiao Group. The wheels of fortune really do turn. That icy president who once looked down on everything and said I wasn't worthy now comes begging me for an investment. A mocking smile spread across my lips. I told her if she wanted to talk, she should come to my Imperial Kitchen in person. The Imperial Kitchen is Yochu's dessert shop. Old Wu was baffled. Tell her to bring her proposal, and we'll see how sincere she really is. I want to see the look on Xiao Banqin's face when she sees me with Shun Yuchu and realizes the useless man she once despised is now someone she has to respect. What a priceless expression that will be. I was in the back kitchen, making Shun Yochu's favorite crab buns. I wore a white chef's jacket, apron tied on, hands still dusted with flour. Senjutsu, like a little kitten, wrapped her arms around my waist from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder while sneaking bites of the freshly steamed crab. At the same time, she gave me orders. This fold isn't pretty. Fix it. I smiled. They just have to look good to you. Silly, this is barely acceptable, and the manager approves. I let her have her fun, occasionally turning to kiss her cheek, the kitchen filled with the aroma of food and the sweet air between us. That's when Xiao Banqin pushed open the door and stepped inside. Today she wore a black business suit, hair still perfectly styled, but exhaustion and anxiety showed on her face. Still, she tried to keep her icy director demeanor, but when she saw the scene before her, she froze completely. She never imagined that the legendary, mysterious, all-powerful owner of Yifan Sunfen was the same useless man she had despised. She couldn't believe that useless man, wearing an apron in the back kitchen of a small dessert shop, was personally cooking for a girl, and that girl was clinging to him possessively. Xiao Banqin's face drained of color instantly. In her always cold, rational eyes, shock, confusion, and a flicker of shame appeared. Shame she didn't even notice herself. Director Xiao, you're here. I barely acknowledged her, wiping my hands, taking off my apron, and greeting her coolly. Senjutsu peeked out from behind me, watching Xiao Banqin with curiosity. Then she whispered, Ninji, who is she? She looks really serious. Someone coming to beg. I smiled, pinching her nose. Senjutsu couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Banshin's face went from white to green, then red, a colorful display. She clenched her fists so hard her nails dug in her palms. Through gritted teeth, she said, Ninji, don't push it. I raised an eyebrow. Director Xiao, if I remember right, you said we had nothing to do with each other. Yet here you are coming to me on your own. If you're not here to beg, then what for? I took Senjutsu's hand and led her to a table outside, setting a steaming basket of buns in front of her. Try these fresh out of the steamer. Then I looked at Xiao Banshin and gestured invitingly. Director Xiao, please sit. What's your business? Speak up. My tone was casual, dismissive. It wasn't at all like the business negotiation she'd imagined. There was no tension, no sharp words, just overwhelming dominance. Xiao Banshin took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm, pulled out a chair, sat down across from me, pulled a thick file from her bag, and pushed it toward me. Mr. Neen, here's Xiao Group's 5-year development plan and financing proposal. Hold on. I raised my hand to stop her. Director Xiao, I think you've misunderstood something. What? Now you're the one begging me, not the other way around. I leaned back and said slowly, I'm not interested in your plan. I just want to ask you one question. I pointed to Senjutsu beside me, then to myself. Do you think she and I make a good couple? Xiao Banshin's body trembled violently. She looked at me, then at Senjutsu happily nibbling buns with a joyful expression. Her lips moved, but no words came out. A good couple? That question stabbed deep in her proud heart like a sharp knife. The man before her was handsome and wealthy, immensely powerful, yet willing to cook personally for an ordinary girl. The tenderness in his eyes was a softness she'd never seen. And that girl, simply dressed, wore a pure smile and clear gaze, radiating the happiness of being wrapped in love, sitting together. They painted a picture of peaceful times. She herself had once stood before him, telling him to leave her world. Now the tables had turned, a huge irony and regret. Like a tidal wave, her pride and reason drowned. They shattered completely as she struggled to speak in a hoarse voice. One that didn't sound like her. They make a good couple, yes? I smiled, but I remember someone once said, I'm useless, a parasite, unworthy of her. The last color drained from Xiao Banshin's face. She knew I was humiliating her, repeating her own words exactly as she had said them. She admitted she'd been blind back then, closing her eyes as if gathering all her strength. I apologize, but business is business, and personal is personal. This cooperation is really important for Group SU. I beg you. I cut her off. Miss Xiao, in what capacity are you begging me? As an ex-fiancé or a loser? Senjutsu listened but didn't understand, smart enough not to get involved. She quietly added a pork bun to my plate and gave me a wordless, supportive look with her clear eyes. That little gesture completely broke down Xiao Banshin's defenses. She saw the unspoken bond between us, that intimacy flowing in our veins, something she'd never have. She always thought what she chased was the peak of her career, supreme power, but only now did she realize that standing at the top looking down on mortals, inside she was hollow and cold. She'd won the whole world but lost the only person who could have given her warmth. Ning spoke again, voice breaking with tears. I beg you, please. That proud, icy Xiao Banshin was crying, tears streaming down her delicate face onto the plan she was so proud of, leaving a wet stain. I watched silently, feeling no satisfaction, only indifference. In my past life, I might have softened at her tears, but this time I didn't even look at the plan. I tossed it straight into the nearby trash. Miss Xiao. I stood and looked down at her, and by the way, I have zero interest in buying a company that's about to go bankrupt. Are you the owner of this company? Or is it you? I said, then stopped looking at her, took Senjutsu's hand, and turned back into the kitchen. Behind me, I heard Xiao Banshin's uncontrollable sobbing. Broken, I knew from that day on, her pride had been crushed by my hands. And this was just the beginning. Xiao Banshin left defeated. I paid no more attention to her fate, because someone even more repulsive came looking for me. Lalon, My biological mother. I don't know how she found out about Senjuchu's pastry shop, but she showed up at the door. 10 years without seeing each other. She'd aged a lot and looked gaunt. That woman still held a certain charm, but now wrinkles marked the corners of her eyes. Her hair was streaked with gray, and she wore cheap clothes. Her outfit looked like it came from a flea market, and her face showed sharpness and calculation. It was clear she and Zhao Qian were struggling. In my past life, they wasted my father's money, and Zhao Qian got hooked on gambling. Soon, they blew through the entire fortune. Without my father's money this time, they were probably in an even worse spot. The moment she saw me, she lunged forward, trying to hug me like she did 10 years ago. I stepped aside with disgust. Shaoni, my son, I finally found you. She started with her act of crying and whining. If you have something to say it, I said coldly. If not, stop crying, Shaonin. How can you talk to your mother like that? Mom knows you still hold a grudge. Back then, I had my own struggles. Your uncle Zhao and I went through some really hard years. We got scammed at a business deal, and now we're drowning in debt. We don't even have enough to eat. Now that you're doing well, you can't just ignore your mother. While wiping her tears, she started to pity herself and demanded I kneel, which made me frown. Shen Yuchu stepped out of the shop and froze at the scene. Ning Yi, who is she? Someone unimportant. I positioned Shen Yuchu behind me. I didn't want her dragged into this mess. Lilan screamed, pointing at Shen Yuchu. Someone unimportant? I'm his mother, his biological mother. And who are you? I shot back, a bitch. You're trying to seduce my son to get your hands on our money, aren't you? Senjuchu's face went pale. My expression darkened completely. I said each word ice cold. I'll say it again. Leave. I'm not going anywhere. Ning Yi, today, you owe me money. $1 million. No, 10 million if you don't pay. I'm staying here forever, and I'll sue you. I'll sue you for abandoning your own mother. Lilan started making a scene, getting aggressive. She thought I was still the same easy puppet, that I'd care about my reputation. What others think. She was wrong. I stared at her ugly face and suddenly smiled. Fine, I said. Don't want to sue me? I'll give you that chance. I pulled out my phone and called Lao Wu. Lao Wu, help me get the best legal team in the capital and the biggest media outlets. I want to hold a press conference titled Settling Scores with My Dear Biological Mother. Lilan was stunned. She didn't expect me to escalate things instead of backing down. You dare? She said fiercely, but uncertainly. And you think I don't dare? I hung up and smiled sarcastically. Lilan, you must have forgotten what happened 10 years ago. How I made my choice then. 10 years ago, I gave you up for money, and 10 years from now, I can ruin you to find peace. Don't like acting? I'll build you a stage. A bigger stage for you to perform on all you want. My gaze was cold and lifeless. Lilan shivered, finally realizing this son of hers was no longer someone she could control. He was a demon, a colder, more ruthless demon than her. She pointed at me, stammering, and in the end, unable to bear the pressure, she fled in shame. Finally, the world fell silent. Senjuchu took my hand worriedly. Is she really your mother? Was she? I squeezed her hand back. I kissed her hand and said, not anymore from now on. You're my only family. Senjuchu looked at me with tears of tenderness and said nothing more. She stood on tiptoe and gave me a warm hug. Don't be afraid from now on. You have me. I thought after driving Lilan away. She'd give up out of fear, but I underestimated her shamelessness. A few days later, countless negative stories about me flooded the internet. The mysterious billionaire Ning Yi is the new Chun Shimei, marrying a rich heiress and abandoning his poor mother. Today, the secret story of the billionaire. They painted me as a son who drained his own mother's life. Tearful articles claimed, mother dead, crying out, my son was seduced by a bitch. They called me ungrateful, blinded by beauty, while Lilan was portrayed as a poor, suffering mother abandoned by her son. Of course, Senjuchu was the bitch who destroyed our mother-son relationship. There were even stolen photos of us eating at a small street shop. Suddenly, public opinion exploded, and thousands of internet users, unaware of the truth, were manipulated by these articles and started viciously attacking me online. My name trended for the first time like this. Some extreme users even doxed Senjuchu's dessert shop, throwing paint and trash at the door, shouting that she was a shameless mistress. Senjuchu was so scared she didn't open the shop for days and clung to me, crying helplessly. I held her tightly, heartbroken. Ning-e, I'm not a bitch. I know you're not. Don't be afraid. I vowed to fix it all. The fire in my eyes burned hotter than ever. Lilan, Zhaochong, you really pissed me off. At first, I just wanted to leave you to your fate. But you insisted on messing with the one person I care about most. Don't blame me for being ruthless. I had Lao Wu investigate, and the results came back quickly. Behind all this were indeed Lilan and Zhao Qian. They'd hired a third-rate marketing firm, bought paid trolls, and I directed this whole mess myself. But what shocked me most was that behind it all was also the shadow of Xiao Banqin, though she wasn't directly involved. She helped fan the flames. Well done, really well done on one side, my shameless biological mother. On the other, my disgruntled ex-fiancé. Since they like teaming up, I'll drag them both down to hell together. I didn't rush to clear things up or delete the hot topics. I let the public outrage grow. I wanted it to reach its peak so the fall would be even harder. 3 days later, when the backlash against me hit its highest point, I held the press conference I planned for Lilan. It was in the grandest banquet hall of the capital's most exclusive 7-star hotel. Hundreds of national media outlets were invited. The scale was unprecedented. I also invited Lilan, who probably thought I'd give in and pay her off. She wore a smug smile. Xiao Banqin showed up too. I gave her a reassuring smile. Cameras flashed like crazy. Standing there, I faced countless microphones and cameras. I opened with, "Hello everyone. I'm Ning-e. Today, I'm here to share a story about lessons learned. I told the story from when I was 10, exactly as it happened. From my father's will to Lilan's threats, and finally my decision. I spoke calmly, without a trace of emotion, as if narrating something that didn't concern me. The room fell deadly silent. Every journalist was stunned. They probably didn't expect such a shocking twist. Lilan's face went pale instantly. She tried to rush forward to refute, but the security guards I'd arranged held her firmly. Of course, words weren't enough. I snapped my fingers. The big screen behind me lit up and started playing a recording. It was from 10 years ago at the funeral, when Lilan whispered a threat in my ear. "If you dare speak, I'll kill you. You're my son. Your money is my money." The voice was crystal clear. I'd taken it from the recording device that lawyer Zoe carried back then. My father was distrustful while alive. When the recording played, the whole room gasped. Cameras flashed at Lilan, whose face looked ashen. She screamed hysterically. "It's fake. It's manipulated." I smiled. "Fake? Then is this fake too?" The screen changed. It played a video from less than a month after my father's death. Lilan and Zhao Chong were at a fancy restaurant, happily toasting. "Lan, I told you. That kid's a fool. He'll definitely choose you. He's my son. I know him well. Once we get 200 million, we'll travel the world. For our bright future, cheers." And I, from start to finish, was just a quiet spectator. Finally, the screen showed a document, an official declaration cutting ties between mother and son. I took the mic. "I, Ning-e, hereby declare," my voice echoed through the hall, "that from today forward, I sever all ties with Mrs. Lilan. No more life, sickness, marriage, or funerals bind us." Then I looked at Xiao Banqin, who was tucked away in a corner. "To everyone and every group that has maliciously slandered and defamed my fiancée, Miss Senjuchu, and me, my legal team will hold them fully accountable, including SIO Group's PR company." After the total shutdown and isolation, a few days later, an unexpected call came through. It was Xiao Banqin. Her voice wasn't cold anymore. It was tired and hoarse. "Ninji, I lost," were her first words. "I'm not calling for forgiveness, just to ask you one question." "Lose?" "If I hadn't broken off the engagement back then, you would have." I cut her off without hesitation. "Xiao Banqin, you've never truly stepped in my world, nor could you, because you never understood me. You only saw what you imagined and liked what you imagined from start to finish. All I ever wanted was to be an ordinary man, cooking for the one I love. On the other end, a long silence fell, broken only by a faint sound, like a heart breaking. I get it, I said before hanging up. I know this woman will never bother me again in this life. Maybe in her own way. She'll rebuild her business empire. But in her world, one piece will always be missing. The piece called happiness. And I've already found mine. I turn off the phone. I turned and walked into the kitchen. Senjuchu wore the apron I bought her, humming a tune as she clumsily learned to make dumplings. Her face was dusted with flour. When she saw me come in, she gave me a big smile. "Big boss, come help me quick. Your imperial head chef wants 3 flavored dumplings today." Sunlight poured through the window, lighting up her sweet, warm face as I stepped closer. I wrapped my arms around her from behind and kissed her flour-covered nose. "As you wish, my queen. Wealth is just vanity right now. None of that matters. I just want to hold this girl in front of me, cook for her forever, and see her smile for a lifetime all over again." I spent $200 million to cut ties with the past, but I never imagined that in the end, what I'd gain was the whole world, a world with her.